Hello and welcome back to another The Walking Dead The Ones Who Live video, and today I want to talk about how will this show end. We only have 2 episodes left, and I'm going off the assumption that this is just a 6-episode miniseries, and even if there is a season 2, I think it's just going to end the exact same way. The way these episodes are shaping up is definitely putting us in a certain direction. Looking at the trailer, we see that episode 5 is going to be about Rick and Michonne trying to get back to Alexandra, being in this brand new honeymoon phase, but then they're under attack by Jadis. We know Jadis is in episode 5 because of the main trailer showed Jadis ramming a yellow truck. They're in the yellow truck at the start of this episode. So Jadis is going to be the big villain of episode 5, and I think episode 5 is going to end with Rick and Michonne coming to the realization that they can't come home. They even say it in the trailer. And episode 6 is going to be about them going back to the summit, and that's when we will see Major General Beale again. And this show is going to end in this big shocking way. I think Jadis' story we dealt with in episode 5. Episode 5 would end with her death, and episode 6 would be about them trying to rush back to the summit to go and get the files in Jadis' quarters to go and save Alexandria. That's what I think the plot of these 2 episodes are going to be. Just deal with Jadis episode 5, episode 6 deal with the fallout of that, and then try and escape yet again from the belly of the beast. And the way that I'm going to think they're going to explain them being from out in the middle of nowhere in episode 5 to at the summit in episode 6, I think they're just going to get, maybe Rick still has his little cooler, and at the end of episode 5, he calls it, they hide Jadis' body, the helicopter comes, picks him up, and takes him to the summit, which is the closest CRM military base. That's how I think he's going to get there for episode 6. But I think episode 6 is going to end with Rick having to stay behind and taking the Epsilon briefing and becoming a soldier of the Red Stripes, and using that power to let Michonne escape. And that's how it's going to end, with the 2 having to separate yet again. Rick stuck at the CRM and Michonne having to go back to her family. And you could tie us into, in The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon, I have this theory that was originally Dwight with saying, oh, someone returned. What if they actually said Michonne returned? And that could be like, okay, tying into Daryl Dixon there, with Michonne returning, Carol then talking to Daryl about it in the Daryl Dixon show. Because the timeline's quite similar, there might be a couple months, maybe a year off, but it's very similar in the timelines. And that's really how I think it's going to end, because we know that this is a big ending for these characters, the ending of their love story. And it's like a ... So it's an ending, but there's the opportunity to continue. And we know this ending is not going to be a big happy one, but it's not going to be a sad one. It's going to be kind of this like melancholy ending. Both Rick and Michonne will survive, but to survive, they have to say goodbye to each other. And that's where the sadness comes. They get this big final goodbye. Michonne goes back east, and Rick is stuck with the CRM. That's how I think this show is going to end, with Rick taking the Epsilon briefing. Maybe, hopefully, we find out about it in the final episode, what the Epsilon briefing is. And it ends with him rising up the ranks with the CRM, and maybe starting this kind of little faction side with Secret A's to eventually take over Major General Beale. And that's probably where we'll leave these characters until we get the big crossover show that Gimple has talked about. And what if the big crossover show is about saving Rick? And Michonne would be this through thread between all the spin-offs to be like, I found Rick, but I need your help to go and save him. And then Daryl's like, oh yeah, there's the Commonwealth. We have an army already at our disposal. And that would be it. You have all these set up with Michonne hopping into all these shows. You get, maybe if you don't see her, you get a character who's been with Michonne, and they go into the show and was like, Michonne told me this, Rick's here, we need to go save him. And then we get this big crossover, Michonne's got this army together, and they go against the CRM, and that's the big crossover. The CRM versus the Commonwealth, or the army that Michonne has built to save Rick. And that'd be really, really cool, because Major General Beale isn't a big character in the show. It is really Rick and Michonne's story, with Jadis being the main villain. Major General Beale is just a character that's here. And he's not going to be in episode 5, he's only in episode 6. He doesn't really have a role to play in the season. And maybe this show is just set up for the big crossover where he's the main villain. So the only issue is, if I'm saying, oh, Michonne will go through all the other shows to go set up for the big crossover, and she's the big kind of catalyst for everything, it wouldn't with Dead City, because that takes place 6 years in advance. So I don't imagine they're going to wait another 6 years to go save Rick. I think in timeline, Rick will be saved within 2 years probably of the ending of this show. So I think if we do see Maggie and Negan in the big crossover, it could be a younger version of Maggie and Negan. Or one of the two characters, hopefully it's both of them, a younger version of them, so that it doesn't mess with Dead City and the whole thing they got going on. You could bring back younger characters than playing a younger version, and it would just work better with the story instead of, oh yeah, I just kind of left Rick to, you know, have brain trauma and rot in the CRM for about almost a decade again. So that's what I think is going to happen, how this show is going to end, and what really this show is going to do, and what its purpose is in the Walking Dead universe, is to just set up this massive crossover, a Walking Dead Season 12, if you want to say. But please tell me down below, do you agree with me on how this show would end? Do you think this is going to end with Rick staying in the CRM, taking the Exxon briefing? Or do you think it's going to end with them both escaping? Or even, they're not even going to save Alexandra, and Alexandra will be blown up. I'd like to know all your thoughts down below. But that's it for me today. So goodbye, peace out, I'll talk to you later.